There are truths that were not made for everyone, and Machiavelli knew this. He understood early on that power lies not in laws, but in the people who interpret them. Not in kindness, but in perception. Not in justice, but in the silent reading of human nature. The secret he never wanted you to know is simple yet devastating. Those who understand the game don't need to cheat to win. They only need to see the board that others pretend not to see. This is why many called Machiavelli cruel, because he revealed what society tries to hide, that morality is a pretty garment worn over instincts. Have you ever noticed how the good guys are almost always used by the strong? How come those who try to please all the time end up being the most exploited? Machiavelli saw this in every gesture, in every court of Florence. People claim to seek love, but what they really seek is power. The power to be noticed, accepted, validated. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, is brutal but liberating. Because when you understand that human beings are predictable in their need for control, you stop being victims of the theater of appearances, and you begin to play the game consciously, not to dominate others, but to avoid being manipulated. The end justifies the means, not as a license to do evil, but as a warning. In the real world, the intention is not enough. Good intentions without strategy are like soldiers without weapons. And the curious thing is that the more someone tries to live above this game, the more easily they are devoured by it. Machiavelli's secret was never to teach manipulation. It was to teach survival, to build reputation, understand human emotions, anticipate conflict, cultivate loyal armies within one's own mind, because deep down, the true prince is the one who rules himself before ruling any kingdom. And this is where the story changes. Because what you're about to learn isn't about politics, it's about lucidity. It's about seeing the world as it is, not as it has been romanticized so that you remain docile. What Machiavelli revealed is the map of human nature, and if you have the courage to watch it through to the end, you'll understand why he preferred to be feared rather than loved. Not because he loved fear, but because he knew the soul of those who love too much. People like to believe they are rational beings, but the truth is that most human decisions are born from the womb of emotions, not logical calculation. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. He observed princes and commoners acting not out of coherence, but out of fear, desire, and pride. It's curious, even the most logical of men are hostage to feelings they don't even realize. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, arises precisely from this realization, understanding real human nature, not the one we wish existed. The end justifies the means because deep down, people react to emotional impact, not rational argument. This is why those who master emotions, their own and others, master the invisible game of influence. If you observe a charismatic leader, you'll notice that they rarely convince with data or numbers. They move hearts before convincing minds. A cold speech may inform, but it's the speech that touches fear, hope, or pride that transforms. Machiavelli taught that an effective ruler must deeply understand human passions, not to manipulate them, but to avoid being manipulated by them. When someone understands that human beings seek security, approval, and power, they learn to use calculated emotional force, firm when necessary, compassionate when strategic. This constant adaptability is what separates the naive from the wise. Consider the business world. Companies that sell dreams prosper more than those that sell only products. Apple doesn't sell cell phones, it sells belonging. Nike doesn't sell sneakers, it sells self-improvement. The same applies to personal life. A person who understands the emotional value of their presence and not just its logical utility becomes magnetic. So, if you want to influence, study fewer spreadsheets and more people. Read Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power and Machiavelli's The Prince. Both show how psychological mastery is the true battlefield of virtù and fortuna. But there's a detail few realize. When you understand that others are driven by emotions, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing you must act to win. Wrong. True power lies in recognizing your own emotions before they overwhelm you. A leader who reacts impulsively surrenders command to those who provoke him. What Machiavelli would call loyal armies of one's own is in the mind the control of one's own passions. It is these inner soldiers, discipline, clarity, self-awareness, that ensure victory amidst the emotional chaos of others. The rest is noise. At its core, all persuasion is emotional. People follow those who make them feel something, not those who just speak well. That's why, in an argument, the one who remains calm dominates, not out of moral superiority, but out of strategy. Understanding what moves the other person is the basis of every effective decision. Machiavelli didn't see this as manipulation, but as reading the human soul. And it's this reading that paves the way for the next secret. Because when you understand that emotions guide actions, you also realize that loyalty is more fragile than it seems. Machiavelli never believed in unconditional loyalty. He understood that human nature is shaped by self-interest, reciprocity, and convenience. When someone is loyal without receiving anything in return, sooner or later they become a tool in the hands of those who perceive this weakness. This is why politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires a clear-eyed look at what sustains loyalty. Loyalty is not born of love, but of perceived utility. The end justifies the means, even when the means is knowing when to abandon a loyalty that has already become a prison. Being loyal is noble. Remaining loyal to someone who betrays you is stupidity disguised as virtue. A simple example. Think of someone who blindly gives themselves to a company, believing that hard work always pays off, until a cost cut reveals that their dedication is worth no more than a spreadsheet. The fault isn't the company's, it's the one who confused loyalty with servitude. The same goes for friendships and relationships. When only one side offers loyalty, the other offers control. Machiavelli called this the calculated use of force, knowing when to yield, when to retreat, and when to abandon the field. It's strategy, not coldness. It's emotional intelligence applied to the political survival of the soul. True loyalty does exist, but it is a silent contract between mutually respected interests. In a loyal army, the commander protects his soldiers and the soldiers protect the commander. It is a pact of mutual benefit, sustained by results, not promises. Therefore, the wise leader must cultivate strong loyalties, but never rely on them blindly. He knows that even the most loyal ally can change sides when fortune changes direction. Virtue and fortune go hand in hand, and those who ignore this are swallowed up by the winds of human ingratitude. The best way to preserve loyalty is to become indispensable. People remain faithful to what they cannot replace. That's why Machiavelli advised the prince to be necessary, never just liked. Being liked is temporary, being necessary is strategic. In the modern world, this means developing rare skills, achieving consistent results, and maintaining a stance of non-negotiable value. Loyalty, in this case, ceases to be a favor and becomes a consequence. And the consequence is more lasting than the promise. Ultimately, understanding the conditional nature of loyalty liberates. It allows us to love without losing ourselves, to serve without submitting, and to trust without blinding ourselves. This insight doesn't make anyone cold, it makes them conscious. Because the real mistake isn't losing the loyalty of others, but losing our own in the name of someone who has already shown they don't deserve it. And it is at this point that Machiavelli's next teaching emerges. The importance of something that protects even those who are betrayed, reputation. Reputation is the invisible shield that precedes any presence. Before anyone hears you, they've already decided what they think of you. Machiavelli said that the appearance of virtue is more important than the virtue itself, because most judge by their eyes, not by reason. In politics guided by reality, not ideals, reputation is symbolic power, and symbolic power is influence. The end justifies the means, even when the means is to build an image solid enough that no one dares to test it. When a leader is seen as strong, even their mistakes seem strategic. When they are seen as weak, even their successes are suspect. In practice, reputation is a modern form of psychological warfare. A renowned doctor is heard before a novice, even if they both say the same thing. A respected investor sets trends with a single comment. The secret is understanding that reputation can't be bought. It's built with consistency, action, and time. Machiavelli believed that a well-managed reputation is worth 1,000 speeches. And in today's world, where every click shapes perceptions, this is truer than ever. Cultivating authority is creating your own loyal army of favorable perceptions, people who defend your name even when you're not around. But there's a fine line between authority and arrogance. Reputation should inspire respect, not envy. Therefore, the calculated use of symbolic power is crucial. Being feared is often better than being loved, as long as one doesn't fall into the trap of being hated. Those who maintain enough distance to be respected and enough humanity to be heard achieve the balance Machiavelli called virtù, the wisdom to act as the moment demands. It's the balance between showing firmness and revealing just the right amount of vulnerability, so that others never know exactly how much they can hurt you. Reputation is also a defense. When it's solid, the enemy's attack turns against him. Consider the example of leaders like Churchill and Steve Jobs. Both were feared and criticized, but they maintained an aura of respect that prevented the destruction of their image. Their allies might disagree, but they never doubted their strength. This is politics guided by reality, knowing that on the chessboard of life, it's not enough to be good. You have to be perceived as strong. And strength here isn't brutality, it's consistency, clarity, and self-control. Caring for your reputation is, at its core, caring for the trust the world places in your image. Every word spoken, every gesture made, is a seed sown in the soil of collective perception. And those who understand this begin to play the game before others, because reputation is the field where the invisible decides the visible. And those who master it win even before war begins. But Machiavelli warned, there's no point in having a good reputation if, in times of chaos, you're not prepared. And that's precisely why the next principle is vital. Learning to prepare during peacetime before conflict arrives. Machiavelli said that the wisest rulers are those who prepare for war in times of peace. The phrase may seem somber, but it reflects a policy guided by reality, not ideals. Humans tend to relax when everything is calm, believing that the good times will last forever. But that's precisely where fortunes often turn. The end justifies the means, and one of the smartest means is silent prevention. While the naive celebrate the calm, strategists reinforce their own loyal armies. Because true power lies not in reacting well to a crisis, but in anticipating it. Those who prepare before the storm govern after it. This is the essence of virtù, the ability to foresee scenarios, study human behavior, and act before others perceive the danger. Think of an investor who analyzes the market while everyone else is euphoric. He buys when others relax and sells when others panic. Constant adaptability is what keeps him alive. The same goes for personal life. Those who take care of their emotional health before the fall, who strengthen their character before temptation, who plan before loss, are rarely struck down by surprise. Peace is the training ground of the soul. It's curious how people claim to hate conflict, yet they constantly fuel chaos through lack of preparation. Machiavelli didn't see conflict as an enemy. He saw it as a test. Conflict reveals who has studied true human nature and who has been guided only by illusions. Therefore, the wise leader observes people's behavior in easy times. Those who are loyal when everything is going well may not be so when the wind changes. And it is in this discreet observation that true alliances are forged. The calculated use of force begins when it is understood that confrontation is inevitable, but defeat is optional. In practice, preparing during peace means training your body, mind, and spirit when no one is looking. It's reading when others are distracted, saving when others are spending, learning when others are complaining. It's developing the habit of readiness. Sun Tzu said that the victorious general wins before the battle begins. Machiavelli would agree. The difference is that the modern prince doesn't lead armed armies, but emotional, social, and professional conflicts. He who masters himself in the silence of peace masters others in the noise of war. True strength is not found in victory, but in preparation. It is in invisible training that visible respect is built. And when conflict finally arrives, and it always does, the difference between the weak and the strong lies not in talent, but in preparation. Because the strong act, the weak react. And it is in this contrast that the next lesson is revealed, the difference between appearing cool and actually being good, which Machiavelli considered one of the greatest illusions of modernity. Machiavelli never confused kindness with naivete. He understood that in politics guided by reality, not ideals, the world rewards the useful, not the innocent. Being nice is the weak's most comfortable trap, the attempt to gain respect through sympathy. But respect isn't born from a smile, it's born from strength. The end justifies the means, even when the means involves learning to say no without guilt. The problem is that many confuse being nice with being good. Nice avoids discomfort, good confronts necessity. Being good requires courage, being nice requires convenience. And in life, convenience doesn't build kingdoms, only dependence. Today's society idolizes the image of docility, as if virtue lay in never displeasing. But this appearance of virtue is what imprisons us most. The nice person wants to be loved by everyone and, in the process, is respected by no one. The strong understand that love comes and goes, but respect is cumulative. This is what Machiavelli called the calculated use of force, not being cruel but being firm, not being cold but being fair. True power comes from clarity, not gentleness. A person who sets clear boundaries attracts trust, not fear. And paradoxically, sincere respect is born of firmness, not complacency. Consider the case of business leaders like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. Neither was cool in the popular sense, but both were good in the Machiavellian sense, effective, strategic, guided by reality rather than fragile ideals. Jobs might seem tough, but he created products that transformed generations. He understood that decisions based on real human nature, not emotional expectations, produce lasting results. This is why the truly good are those who face the discomfort of truth, while the cool take refuge in the illusion of consensus. One destroys their own power by trying to please, the other strengthens their empire by being authentic. Being good isn't about being sweet, it's about being whole. It's about keeping an open heart and a sharp mind. It's about using empathy as a tool, not a shackle. When you're truly good, you say no calmly and yes responsibly. It's the balance between virtù and fortuna, acting according to the context without losing your center. Because naive kindness is self-sabotage masquerading as virtue. Clear-headed kindness is spiritual power in the form of action. And those who understand this begin to choose where to put their energy, rather than distributing it to those who wouldn't do the same for them. In the end, being strong doesn't mean being tough, but being real. It means seeing the world as it is, not as we wish it were. It means understanding that sometimes protecting what is just requires appearing cruel in the eyes of the weak. And this is precisely where Machiavelli became dangerous to moralists, because he revealed what no one wanted to admit. That, in the war of appearances against essence, the strong survive and the cool disappear smiling. And it is this same game of appearances that leads us to the next secret: not being fooled by them. Machiavelli observed that the world is sustained by illusions, and that the most dangerous are not those who lie to others, but those who believe in their own masks. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, begins when the individual ceases to be enchanted by the veneer of appearances. The end justifies the means, and one of the most powerful means is to see what lies behind the smile, the promise, the staged virtue. The appearance of virtue, he said, is the preferred tool of the disingenuous. False good-naturedness is the disguise of those who desire power without the courage to admit it. Therefore, those who wish to govern themselves must first learn to distrust the surface, including their own. The modern world is a theater of masks. Perfect profiles, inspiring speeches, and calculated behaviors create the illusion of authenticity. Social media amplifies the same game Machiavelli saw in the courts of Florence. Whoever dominates the narrative dominates the power. The calculated use of force today is knowing when to remain silent in the face of others' performances. Those who react to every appearance become playthings for manipulation. The wise man, however, observes. He realizes that the sweetest speech often conceals the bitterest intentions, and that the most fervent moralists conceal the deepest shadows. Therefore, observing without reacting is a virtue, an act of silent power. Think about workplaces, friendships, and romantic relationships. How many times has the friendliness turned out to be opportunistic? How many times has what seemed like love been control in disguise? True human nature is driven by desire, fear, and need, and these forces shape behavior. The naive judge by words, the strategist observes actions. This is why Machiavelli advocated for loyal armies of their own, people tested by adversity, not convenience. Those who only support you while the sun shines are allies of your image, not your essence. A true ally is one who remains when the stage collapses. Recognizing appearances doesn't mean becoming cynical, but lucid. The cynic disbelieves everything. The lucid one distinguishes. Knowing who feigns virtue and who lives virtue is one of the greatest acts of wisdom, and this requires patient observation and constant adaptability. It means understanding that people present themselves according to what they want to achieve. Therefore, the question Machiavelli would ask today would be simple. What does this person gain by appearing this way? This cold analysis protects more than any moral advice. It is the psychological shield of those who prefer to see reality naked rather than be deceived by their comfortable version. But there's something even deeper. Understanding the game is the first step. Knowing how to play without losing your soul is the second, because living among masks without becoming one is an act of spiritual discipline. It's the point where self-knowledge meets power, and it is precisely there that Machiavelli would reveal the ultimate secret, not about manipulating others, but about protecting one's own mind, the art of psychological self-defense. Machiavelli never wrote about psychology, but he understood it before the term existed. He knew that on the chessboard of power, everyone plays, even those who swear they don't. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, arises from this awareness. Pretending there is no game is the first step toward being manipulated. Psychological self-defense begins when the individual recognizes the hidden rules of human relationships: status, approval, control, desire. The end justifies the means when the means is lucidity, and lucidity is realizing that the world doesn't revolve around pure intentions but real motivations. Machiavelli wasn't asking you to become cold, he was asking you to become awake. Most people are driven by unconscious forces: fear of rejection, hunger for recognition, desire for control. Those who ignore this become puppets of others' expectations. Therefore, the calculated use of inner strength is essential, not to dominate others, but to avoid being dominated. Self-defense begins with emotional mastery, observing before reacting, understanding before judging, responding only when strategic. Machiavelli would call this virtue applied to the psyche, the ability to act intentionally amid emotional chaos. It is what differentiates the wise from the reactive. While the naive take offense, the lucid analyze. A practical example. At work, the manipulator praises before asking for it. The insecure one remains silent to please. The narcissist provokes you to test your control. The game is subtle, and almost no one recognizes it. Therefore, self-knowledge is the modern equivalent of loyal armies. Your discipline, your clarity, and your limits are the weapons that protect you. Without them, any disapproving look will dismantle you. True human nature is political, even in the most intimate relationships. Pretending it isn't is an invitation to suffering. Accepting it is liberation. But be careful. Understanding the game doesn't mean becoming a cold and calculating player. It means playing consciously, not instinctively. It's choosing when to act and when to observe. It's mastering your own board without falling prey to the winner's ego. True strength is silent. Those who understand human psychology don't need to prove anything. They simply observe the pattern, anticipate the movement, and maintain their balance. This balance is the shield of the wise. Because psychological self-defense isn't about beating others, but about not losing yourself in the middle of the game. In the end, Machiavelli would leave us with a warning: those who see the game begin to see everything, and this changes the way we exist. When you understand the human theater, manipulations, compliments, and promises lose their power. You begin to see intentions like a general sees the battlefield, and it is at this moment that true power is born. The power to choose one's own path without bowing to the gaze of others. But the curious thing is that, while some fear this knowledge, others seek it as if it were a forbidden secret. And it is precisely this secret that Machiavelli never wanted you to know. In the end, it all comes down to a choice: continue being played, or start playing consciously. Machiavelli never preached evil. He merely described what already existed in the human heart. What you do with this knowledge is what determines whether you will be a king or a pawn. Because understanding human nature doesn't make you cruel, it makes you free. And freedom is the privilege of those who see the truth without collapsing. So observe your world. Does anyone who compliments you do so out of gratitude or interest? Does anyone who calls you good really respect you, or are they just taking advantage of your need to please? These questions are uncomfortable because they touch the wound of the ego. But it is in them that your psychological self-defense begins, because true power is not dominating others. It is not allowing yourself to be dominated by your own illusions. Starting today, pay less attention to what people say and more attention to what they do when they think no one is watching. Learn how to prepare during peacetime, protecting your reputation like a treasure. To be good enough to inspire and strong enough to set limits, moving with virtù and fortuna, firm, adaptable, lucid. And if something in you awakened while hearing these words, don't ignore it. Awakening power begins with awareness, and awareness begins with observation. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications, because here we don't talk about manipulation, we talk about lucidity. And lucidity is what separates those who are governed from those who have finally learned to govern themselves.